Hi. He's like, babe, you're on. Um, Thank you everybody for being here. I'm used to Jay starting us, so I was kind of messing with the camera angle still. Thank you so much for everybody being here and for everyone who participated today in the online vigil. We're going to go through all of those a little bit later in the show. So you still have time if you want to pull up Twitter or Instagram. Mainly Twitter. I do know the people that sent them on Instagram as well, though, because I know there's a few people that aren't on Twitter, and that's fine. So I have those written down as well. And so we'll do that in the middle of the show. But first things first, I wanted to talk about my friend. That's why we're here tonight. Some people remember that during the Beliefnik trial, it was really hard for me. I got super triggered for the sake of Rebecca's friends and family, for what she went through. And that was because something similar happened to one of my friends. And so to understand the kind of friendship we had, I want to tell you just a little bit about where we went to school and how we grew up. You all know that I'm from Kansas, but I also went to a really rural school out in the middle of a cow pasture. Literally, there were cows like right next to the football field. So we would see them at track practice. We would, talk to them as we ran around the loop. And our class is more like what would be like a graduate school cohort because it was so small. My class only had, I think, 52 people in it. So we knew each other really, really well. And a lot of them knew each other even better than I knew them because I started with this group when I was a freshman in high school, and some of them had been together since kindergarten. My friend Kelly joined our class in later years of elementary school. So we had been together all the time. It was just, it's kind of a weird experience to really tell to people who had hundreds and hundreds of kids in their graduating class. But like, we knew everything that was going on with every single person. You knew everybody's parents. You knew everybody's siblings. And Kelly and I sort of had a bond too, because my dad and my stepmom were teachers at the school that I attended. And then there were two other people in my class who had faculty parents. And so the three of us were kind of like, we were kind of buddies because we knew how much it would like sting when people would be mad at our parent for some reason. Kelly's stepdad was the superintendent, and so if he did not cancel school when there was just a snowflake in the air, everybody was like, geez, what's the matter with him? So we had that little bond together, but we also really liked all the same activities. She ran track. She also ran cross country. Kelly was 5'11", and she was like all legs, and she could run for hours and hours and hours. And so we did track together, and then I was the basketball manager. And then later on, I was like a basketball cheerleader. See, it's a small school. We did everything. So she played basketball, she ran track, she did cross country. And so in some way, I would be involved in all of that. And then she did a little bit of theater, which I did, of course, and choir, which we did together. But just a few things about Kelly that just make me happy whenever I think of her is we would have these. Kelly was just like, she didn't have any enemies. Like I could name, there's only 50 people in my class. If you told me anybody else basically in my class, I could tell you like 3 people in the class that really didn't like them, including myself. There were more than 3 people that probably didn't like me, but I cannot think of 3 people that dislike Kelly. I can't think of anybody that disliked Kelly because she just was like kind to everybody, but not in like a sugar saccharine way. She was just fun. And she didn't get involved in drama between people. She was just kind of cool with everybody. And the other thing was, I remember so badly in high school just trying to fit in. I remember that during track, when we were sophomores in high school, the seniors were really good. And so we were really lucky, Kelly and I, that we got to be on the varsity team. And so we were like, always watching what the seniors were doing. Well, this is at a time that the seniors decide that what they should eat for lunch at school is not school lunch, but is a miniature bag of rolled gold pretzels and a Diet Coke. So there was some definite like body image things going on with these senior girls. And I didn't really realize that that's why they were doing it. But then, of course, like I'm like, okay, I have to have rolled gold pretzels and a Diet Coke. Like I have to do it. And Kelly was like, she was not going to do that because she was hungry. And we should have been hungry because, we're running day and night all the time for track practice. We're burning off tons and tons of calories. And I'm like, well, we have to have these Diet Cokes and rolled gold pretzels so that we can look like the other girls. And so one day sit down to lunch, and I'm of course like getting out my rolled gold pretzels and my Diet Coke, and she's sitting nearby, and she always would bring we had like condiments, a little condiment bar. She would always bring the squeegee bottle of ranch dressing. So she brought that to the table with her. We were having spaghetti. She put ranch dressing all over that spaghetti. She opens her like little lunch that she had brought along with her, 2 candy bars. She always had 2 candy bars. And milk, she like ate all the extras and everything. And she just was not bothered. And I was just like, oh my goodness, I just think everyone's looking at me all the time. And Kelly did not think anyone was looking at her, number one. And she didn't give a shit if you were looking at her because it just didn't mean anything to her. She was just having fun. And if she was hungry, she was going to eat. So that always, like, I look back at that now and I'm like, man, you were such a badass. Like, all I cared about was how I looked, and you didn't care at all. And I just think that was just something that is so endearing to me, especially now looking back as an adult. So like I said, she had no enemies whatsoever, and she didn't really date guys. So there was also like drama. There was no drama with her because she was like friends with all the guys. She was friends with all the girls. It wasn't like she was going to like steal your boyfriend or whatever. But she starts dating this guy when we were juniors, and he's from another school. And when I tell you that all like 50 of us are invested in this relationship, like nobody else is ever like this with, we would date other people from other schools quite frequently because, there's only 50 of us. You had to bring somebody to the prom besides somebody that you know as well as your brother. So we didn't really get too invested in those types of things, like they'd break up and we wouldn't even really know what happened. But when this guy like broke her heart for some reason, I don't even remember what he did, and it was probably pretty benign, but she was upset. It was like our entire class was like, this person is dead to us. He is written off forever. I never met him, but I to this day know his name and have like intense feelings about him, even though I'm sure he didn't do anything wrong. But I just thought that that was just such a testament of how she was, that everybody was like, don't mess with our girl. Um, and then one of my last stories about her was that Kelly had like zany ideas all the time. Like she always, like the two candy bars, there were always two. She was always like, if we were going somewhere on a trip, she'd always buy candy. Like we'd buy little souvenirs, she'd buy candy. Um, so she had all these crazy ideas. Well, during track, and I see that some people are saying like they ran cross country and track, and not only do you have a weird diet, but runners are kind of weird people. They have weird superstitions, and so for some reason they were giving out these lizards at McDonald's with Happy Meals. And Kelly decides she laces these two lizards in under her laces on her running shoes. And she was like, all hail the lizards. These lizards are good luck. We have to all have the lizards. Um, so, it takes us like weeks because we have to go and like get the lizards in Happy Meals. And I'm sure like everybody had allowances or whatever it was, but it took forever for us to get these freaking lizards. Then the whole team of girls, the whole girls team has these lizards laced up in our shoes. And let me tell you, like, this was what we talked of day and night. And now that I have a teenage daughter, I really feel for my mom because I probably drove her freaking crazy about these lizards because we wanted ones that kind of went with the color shoes we had. So we couldn't just get the first two lizards that we got out of the Happy Meal. We just had to keep going back and going back. And I mean, it was this whole ordeal. So we finally get these freaking lizards, and we probably have them for about 2 weeks. And we go to a meet and we don't do, this was when we were seniors, so we were kind of in charge. And we don't do that great at the meet. And, but we don't do that bad either. Like some of us did good, but we don't do great. And all of a sudden, Kelly decides we're like, like 2 hours away from home. We're going to go on the bus soon and go home after the trophy ceremony. Kelly decides out of nowhere that the lizards are now bad luck. So she is like, get your lizards, like she's like leading this whole charge about how we have to unlace the lizards from our shoes. We're all like doing it madly. And then we take them onto this high school's back part of their football field, like a little bit past their end zone, and bury them. I mean, I don't know. They might still be there to this day. I don't know. But she had this whole like ritual that she's doing. Like, we're getting rid of the bad luck. We're going to bury it. We're leaving it here. We're going to rise from the ashes. We're going to be the best track team that's ever lived. And I mean, I knew like coming home that night that I was going to have to like tell my mom that I buried these lizards like in, private property. And I was like worried I was going to get in trouble. I was like, how about if they find out about the lizards and, they can trace them back to us? I was very goody. So I was very worried about that. And I was just like, what's going to happen to us? But nothing happened to us except for that we had a good time. And you always had a good time with Kelly. I actually got to go to a couple years of college with her as well. After I transferred schools, I ended up dating somebody that was living with her brother. And so I saw her a lot, and that was great. College was not her thing. She didn't love school. She loved being social. She loved working hard. She was super competitive, as you can tell from the lizards. Um, and she really missed that part of high school. And so she decided when we were 21 here on my right, this is like her bedroom when she was 21 years old. She decided she's going to go the Navy. And I just was like, you're so unafraid when I hear this. I'm like, what? Like, why do you want to go to the Navy? This just sounds like horrible because it's going to be such hard work and it's going to be so scary and you're not going to know anyone. And that was just Kelly. She was like, all right, that was what she was going to do. And so when we were 21, she joined the Navy. And so she moved away from Kansas. And she was always just busy living, is the best way I can describe her, because she was never just, she had zero chill, but she wasn't annoying. She was just busy living. Unfortunately, she ends up meeting her husband at a party in 2002. So in 2001 is when she goes to the Navy. So she's there for about a year, and then she meets him at this party. And she was kind of dating this other guy, but they struck up a conversation and they end up talking all night long. And so then she goes and breaks up with the other boyfriend later, so that she can date this guy. And he actually, like, here's one of the red flags that you can write down for yourself or think about for yourself or for your kids, is that, he was involved with her. Like, they, stayed up talking that night, or whatever happened between them. He was involved in that. But from that point on, he used that to say that she was untrustworthy because she had a boyfriend at that point in time, but she started talking to him. So from the very beginning of the relationship, it was like he had one up on her. And they ended up getting married in 2003. He was also in the military. He was also in the Navy. And Kelly was medically discharged. She had a circulation issue with her heart that started happening after joining the military. I'm not sure if it was something that she had congenitally and then it got worse or what. I'm going to tell Sloan to be quieter.
I just
Sorry, peeps, had to parent. So he, yeah, he started that from the start. Sarah, that's a great phrase. Weaponizing secrets. Absolutely. So she gets married to him in 2003. And shortly thereafter, in very short order, they have a little girl. And she was born in the end of 2003, the very end of 2003. In 2004, things were going badly for Kelly, and she knew it. So they were in North Carolina at this point, Todd. They were in North Carolina at the time that things start going bad. And she tells her mom, and her grandmother get a U-Haul in the middle of the night. And they come and they pack all of Kelly's things and they pack all of the baby's things, and they take Kelly and the baby back to Kansas with them because they're like, this is not happening. He's not going to treat you like this. This is not going to happen. And so she drives with her mom across the country with her baby, who's still nursing at the time. And he shows up. He knows exactly where she's gone. He shows up the first day, and the mom says, I'm going to call the police. You're going to have to leave. You got to get out of here. She doesn't want to be with you, etc. And then her mom went to work the next morning. And in the time that her mom was at work, he had come over to the house again, and he had convinced her that, he was going to change, wasn't going to happen anymore. And he convinced her to come back to North Carolina with him. On the way back to North Carolina, they stop in the city where Kelly's dad lives. And they stop there for her to go to the bathroom, and he leaves with the baby. He strands her in Kansas, and he drives back to North Carolina. They call the cops. The cops then say they can't do anything because he's the father of the baby. So basically, he ends up getting a hold of her and telling her that she can have the baby back and they can be together if she buys a bus ticket to North Carolina and, comes back. So she buys the bus ticket because that baby is her life and she's not going to leave her baby. So she buys the bus ticket. And then they end up needing to, in this time that he's going to change and everything, they end up needing to move again. And they need to be closer to his family. And definitely her family took umbrage with that because they knew that he didn't want her close to them at all. So they move from North Carolina to Oregon, where his family is from. And they live there. That was so the incident with the U-Haul was in September of 2004. And by October of 2005, Kelly goes and gets a restraining order. And in this time, not only has he isolated her from her family, but he has all these rules for her, like when she can eat. And these are all documented within emails that happen between them. He has rules about how much money she can spend because he's still in the military. She's not, and she's a stay-at-home mom. She doesn't have a job, so he doles out all the money. Also, she's not allowed to drive their car because he bought and paid for it. So whenever she needs to go anywhere with the baby during the day or at all, she has to take the bus. And that's one reason that she agreed to going to Oregon where they went, because they actually had a good public transportation system. And so she had to think about that in her decision. So in October, she goes to the cops and she tells them, and she fills out a restraining order. And she says that she's afraid of him because there's 2 guns in the house and she's afraid that he will use them. She's afraid for her life. She's afraid for her daughter, that he's told her things like, how he's going to beat her up, how he's going to slit her throat bilaterally. This is the part of the crime. So this is a trigger warning for the rest of this portion. I'll go back to lighter things after this, but this is if you want to step away, I totally understand. Tells her, I have a hole dug big enough to bury you in the backyard. And the judge agrees with Kelly and gives her the restraining order. So she gets that restraining order granted. She starts trying to get it in October of 2005. She gets it granted November 21st, 2005. He moves in. He moves out from her. He moves in with his parents. And they take the guns with him to his parents' house. And so it's her and her daughter living in this little duplex. And then she shared custody with him. And, he would come and get the daughter and take her to his parents. 7 days after the restraining order, he was so angry because of the things that she said about him in the restraining order. He files for divorce and he files for sole custody of their daughter. who is now 2. So there is no way out of this, because if she tries to leave the state with her daughter, that's kidnapping. And if she leaves without her daughter, she's leaving without her daughter, but it also can be considered parental abandonment, and that can work against you as well. So the people that she had consulted told her she was doing everything right. She was doing everything she could. She got this restraining order. The problem with restraining orders is that the person who gets them is the person who follows the law. And the person who they're against is a person who doesn't give a shit about the law. And so 2 days before Christmas, when he had custody of their daughter, his daughter was at his parents' house. He leaves his parents' house after midnight. In the middle of the night, he parks a block away from her house. He walks up, he sneaks up to her house. He has on gloves. He brought with him socks, duct tape, a K-bar knife, and a Mossberg rifle. And he gets there to talk to her. So he uses his key to break in. He finds her in her bed. She's reading. And he puts socks around her wrists and duct tapes her and binds her and gags her. Now, he used the socks because, as he says in his police interview later, he was going to get her to agree to this deal that he had worked up, and then there wouldn't be any evidence of him, hurting her, because the socks were going to keep her from having, burns from the duct tape. So they end up talking for 4 hours, because this is the deal that he tries to offer to Kelly, who I've told you, does not take shit from people. He tells her, you can have $1,000 and my Jeep. If you leave the state, you can move back, be with your mom, and leave their daughter there with him. And he thinks that this is going to be a plan that works. So, of course, she was like, no, you can't have my daughter. And then he said, are you going to call the cops on me for being here? And she said, yes, I'm going to. And so at that point, I think, is where he determined that she was not going to stay alive. Because in his testimony and in his police interview, he said, I thought there just has to be a better compromise, because if I leave the house, I go to jail and she gets my daughter. And that was not going to happen. So that's pretty much where I feel like he made that decision. His father and brother-in-law wake up in the morning. He's not there. The baby's there. He's not there. And they get worried. And they, of course, go right over to Kelly's house, because they know that's where he probably is. And they don't know that he's there because he parked his Jeep a ways away to hide. He won't answer the door. He won't answer the phone. Of course, she's bound, and so she can't come to the door. She can't answer the phone. So his dad calls the police and brings the police into the situation. And when the police arrive, they again try to get somebody to come to the door. Nobody can come to the door. Nobody answers the phone. So one of the police officers looks through the window and can see into the bedroom and can see Kelly sitting, and tries to get her attention, tells her to come to the door. And she says, I can't, I need help. And so with that, they broke open the door. And at the moment that they open the door, her husband shot her twice in her chest and once in her head. And then he just put the gun down. He put his hands up and he walked out, and he didn't resist whatsoever. He goes to the police station and they interview him, and he is basically saying, I hated her. I hated her guts. She was a whore. She was cheating on me. She spent all of our money. All these things. But then, of course, when it comes to the trial, All these things have now changed, and the defense is claiming that he shot her out of fight or flight because he has PTSD. And so it was the trial got quite a bit of attention, and it was in, like blogs, and because it was 2008. Um, and so it got attention. And so when I considered doing this story, I reached out to Kelly's mom because it hasn't been in the public eye for a long time. And I wanted um, Kelly's mom to know that I was going to talk about her, and I wanted her to be okay with that. And so I reached out to her, and she said that she would love for me to do that because she just always hopes that Kelly's story can help somebody else get out of a dangerous situation. So during the trial, the defense tries to say it's PTSD. And luckily, the prosecution was able to bring in a lot of the things like the restraining order that Kelly had written herself. They brought in journals that she kept of the things that he said to her. They brought in emails that he sent to her. And I am so happy that his own words to her are what made that jury see that this was not something that happened out of PTSD. This was a long time coming situation where he systematically abused her. He financially abused her. He isolated her from her family, told her she was no good. He told her she was fat and terrible. And I am so proud of Kelly for doing that. I'm just so proud of her when I think of her now, because I just always thought she was badass from the time that we were young, because she didn't care about what people thought about her. And I just think, like, she had no idea when she was writing this stuff. She was writing the worst things that had ever happened to her. She had no idea that she was going to be protecting her daughter like that by using her words like that. And it just is like, I have chills thinking about it because she makes me proud. So basically, the argument that it was non-intentional because of PTSD, the PTSD was triggered when the cops, broke in the door. That was the defense. The jury deliberated for 15 minutes, folks, and said no. They came back after 15 minutes and found him guilty, and then they went into the penalty phase. And during the penalty phase, he kind of was like, oh, well, everyone was, telling the truth about Kelly. She was really wonderful, and I love her, and the only thing I can do is not bring her back. And, I wish I could bring her back, et cetera, et cetera. So he ends up not getting the death penalty. He is life without parole for aggravated murder. So a jury of 8 men and 4 women saw right through that. And I'm just forever glad for that reason. And I check on him pretty often by looking up inmate search. There was a time when COVID was going on, and they were talking about trying to release people that, maybe only had one crime, or they weren't repeat offenders, sex offenders, or whatever. And he was on the list of people that they had considered, releasing. And that didn't happen. So that's wonderful as well. So even though he claims all that stuff in the sentencing phase, he still blamed Kelly to the very end. He's filed 2 appeals. It's gone all the way up to the Oregon Supreme Court, and it has been denied. So I don't believe he has appeals left unless there's some other sort of thing that I don't know about. But and the thing that his appeal was about was that they should not have let Kelly's statements in. And that gives me a little bit of joy too, a little bit of twisted joy, because he knows he is sitting there today because Kelly was allowed to speak when he thought that he had silenced her. And I'm so proud of her. But I also think back to what Joni said the other night and how everything is so individualized for people. That a plan for this is not, it's not like there's a specific treatment plan that you can give to someone who tells you that they're in this situation. You know, by the letter, Kelly did every single thing right. She kept records. She got a restraining order. She didn't leave her child. She, made the courts aware of the weapons that she was afraid of. And she didn't kidnap her child and just leave. So unfortunately, even if you do everything right, that doesn't mean that you get to live. And I wanted to take a little bit of time so we could go through our wave of light that you guys did with me today. You can't, before we go on to that picture of Kelly, you couldn't see in the background. I forgot to say, she I just feel like if you are a girl from the 90s and mid 2000s, you relate to this. She had cut out like words from magazines and stuck them on her wall. It's like, run wild, seize the moment. And I love that little portion of that. That's why I said I want to pick this picture. I had other pictures of her, but I just love that because it really like harkens me back to my youth where I would do things like that. Like I made a collage out of my entire wall. So I just wanted to point that out and I had forgotten. So if we can go to the wave of light. That very first one was mine. It just said, for Kelly, who's forever 25, who had the zaniest ideas, a huge smile, a quick wit, and loved her daughter and running. Joni's says, your truth is not mine to tell. Your light shines on for us all. Your courage inspires great change. Your memory will live on. That's so pretty. Steve participated. He put a picture of a candle. Carly participated. She has this wonderful quote that says, someday all you'll have to light the way will be a single ray of hope, and that will be enough. I love that. Miko did it. It says, sharing our stories silences shame and reminds us of our human experience. That isn't Miko. I'm sorry. Miss Stina. I don't have my reading glasses on. Leonard Amber. It's a beautiful picture. LeBrock, shining a light on the stories of loss, persistence against all odds, and triumphs. Tracy A., I now see how owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing that we will ever do. And that quote's from Brene Brown. The Vivster. Viv wrote, sharing our stories helps us connect with others that have similar stories, and it lets us know that we aren't alone. Absolutely. Tracy A. has one here too that says, trauma may happen to you, but it can never define you. Melinda, I can't read her last name, Longland. Sorry, I really should have put my glasses on. In memory of those lost and in honor of the survivors. That's from Catherine Grow. This one's from Amy, and it says hope and remembrance. And I love that candle. This one is from my mother-in-law, and it says Domestic Awareness Month is here. And that is just a gorgeous picture. She has a seashell, a little lantern. Dr. SBB lit one and says for Kelly. Andrea, or Andrea, I'm not sure how you say your name. You are brave, she says. Miss Wildside Christine says, you are worth it. You are not defined by what others say about you. This is Maureen. And she has October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Tell someone you know you are being abused. You're not alone. And then she had the nationwide hotline on there too. That one was also from Mistina. This one's from Mandy. Send a message of hope or remembrance in our effort to raise domestic violence awareness this October. She's a pretty handle. Madeline, Baby Bo, says she doesn't have a candle available, but this lyric is so applicable to my survivor story. Breathe. Breathe in, breathe through, breathe deep, breathe out. Che has hers. She has this, the picture of Kelly up on her screen. And also the artwork was done by a mutual classmate of ours named Lori. So that's nice to see that too. Hello Spring says prayers of hope, prayers for survivors, and prayers for those who tragically lost their lives due to their abusers. Sarah, aspiring court reporter, says for all those who left and all those who couldn't and all those who didn't make it through. Light the Way says today is Domestic Violence Awareness Day for our missing mothers. And then it says who are all believed to have been victims of domestic violence. And then she has the 3 names in there, Julianne, Patty, and Lorraine. Oh, that one was from Joanne. Hers is so beautiful, so peaceful. This one's from Susan Lupo. She says, thinking of all those who suffer from domestic violence. This one's from Dizzy. Beautiful. This is from Andrea. She was on Joe's show the other night, and she says, for Anna Marie, who exemplified courage and the spirit of creativity. Today's Domestic Violence Awareness Day. Light a candle and use the hashtag Shine for Change to keep this virtual vigil bright. Lexi says, I'm still in Greece, but I'm lighting virtual candle in honor of October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This one is from Sewing Geek. It's a pretty candle too. This one was that Sean B? Okay. Danelle. Fuzzy Puff. Mystic Gypsy says, I miraculously survived relentless violence at the hands of an ex who remains a threat to me and all communities. I struggle living knowing others have died when I didn't. My thoughts are always with victims and their loved ones. Peace be with them. Thank you for sharing that. There were a few peoples that didn't come up on there. I don't know how they didn't, but I know Kaylin did it. And Liz Merrill did it on Instagram. So I know there were a few more people. Brittany also had one. So some of them didn't come up, but I'm just glad that they're there. It makes me so happy that so many people participated. But I know, honey, somebody had one for their mom. And it didn't come up. Okay, he's going to try to find it. I do believe that Mistina had one for her mom. And I want to be sure to read that because it was so beautiful. Oh, there, Catch Lisk did one. He says, I'm already ready. Beautiful candle. Okay. Okay, here we go. So this is from Messina. For my beautiful mother, a survivor of domestic abuse who suffered emotionally and physically at the hands of my father for many years. I envy her strength and honor her for finding the courage to leave with 3 young children and for her resilience when she was on her own. I love you, Mom. And I just love that people also have been tweeting out the phone number um, for help. A wonderful resource is the um, National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I love that people realize the situation, and a lot of times those websites, when you're looking at them, will they'll tell you how to erase them from your search history. They have a kill switch on them, basically, so that if someone walks in the room and you're on it and you don't want them to see it, you click that real quick and it's gone. Um, so that's a wonderful resource as well. Through this month, thanks to Mandy and Stevie Irwin for bringing this idea to the forefront and for doing so much with design and brainstorming and just moral support in presenting this tonight. Um, I didn't know how I would feel doing it. So thank you for everybody that supported and sent little hearts throughout the day. That was just amazing. You made me feel so happy. And I just, I cannot tell you how much it means to me to have people listening about my friend. She graduated from a class of 50 people. Um, and so that you get to hear the great things about her really means a lot to me. So Dr. Johnston talked last night, or not last night, but the last Women Who Rock interview with us, and she talked about how there has to be an individualized approach for every single person who goes through domestic violence, and that is so true. So if someone comes to you and trusts you, one of the main things that's really important to do is to just be a person that can listen without judgment. And it's going to be hard to hear someone that you love tell you that they're being hurt, and that they may not be able to leave yet, or they may not be able to leave. It's incredibly hard for family and for people of support to hear those types of things. So the most important thing is to listen without judgment and just to know that you're not in that situation. You don't understand all of the economic pressures. You don't understand all of the feelings that the person has for that person. There's a famous analogy that's like, you don't boil a frog by just throwing it in the boiling water. You throw an alive frog in a warm bath of water and he swims around and he's like, this is nice, until he cooks himself. And I always think, like, what to the people that this happens to, it feels sometimes like it's out of nowhere. And of course, to us looking back, or to us from the outside, we're like, no, he's a jerk. He's been doing, or she's been doing these things, all along, and they've been isolating you, but you don't see those things because you're just like that frog and the water's just a little bit warmer and you don't notice it. And so when something very violent happens, it's like gobsmacking to you because it's not what you believe is going on. It's not your feelings whatsoever. And so you have to remember that that's how they're feeling when something happens. It would be like if you're in a good relationship and all of a sudden that person comes home and does something just totally, what you feel is totally out of character. And so that's how people feel, because they don't see those little things all along like we see. Also, I wanted to, I forgot to mention Kristen Guile, um, because she was somebody that Sleuths Investigate put in the chat at the very beginning. I was going to recognize her during the wave of light. She was killed during a murder suicide. She didn't know that he had been released from jail, and she has 6 babies that no longer have their mama. So we are thinking of Kristen and her family and her babies tonight. So it's hard for people to see the gaslighting, the isolation, the threats. Of course, I mean, you're right to believe the threats, right? Um, a lot of times people will make a threat against not you, maybe your child, maybe your mother or father or your sister or brother. Um, Abusers are very, very good about knowing what will hurt you the most and what you would stay to protect. So, and we also know that the most dangerous time in domestic violence is when there's a threat that you're going to leave or that you actually do leave. That's the deadliest time for women and men that are involved in this type of thing. And so it's really hard. And that's my challenge for you. If you've never really thought much about this topic before, you haven't been touched by it, is that you catch yourself. If you ask yourself, even if you don't tweet it out or you don't say it, but you catch yourself when you say, well, why didn't she leave him? Why'd she stay with him? Why'd he stay with her? And yes, absolutely, Hello Spring. Men are definitely abused too. It's underreported. It's I believe 1 in 7 women, or 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men, and it's underreported for men and women. So it's likely more than that. You have to realize also, just like Kelly, the law made it hard for her. You know, she had a restraining order, but she couldn't leave with her daughter and she couldn't leave without her daughter. And her support system was in another state. So there are so many things that have to go through your mind before, or when you see someone, testifying on the stand about something that they've gone through. Just try to hold that judgment for just a second and think, okay, I don't know what this would be like. Instead of us real quick being like, oh my gosh, this guy was a psycho. Why didn't she leave him? If you can, like my friend did, what helps something when you're being gaslit like this is to keep records. And because then you can't argue with yourself when you go back into those records. Now, of course, that has to be kept somewhere safe. So consider that as well. There's so many factors. It must be just the most just mind-boggling thing. And especially when you have a child that you're also trying to protect at the same time. So that's my hope, is that we're all going to come out of this. Prudence. We're all going to come out of this with a little more compassion for people when we see them on the stand, when we know them in public, etc. I'm sorry, Hello Spring, that your brother went through that. Somebody said, oh, yes, her family absolutely got custody of her daughter. Her daughter graduated from high school in May. She's awesome, like her mom. So that was a little light that came out of this, that her family is who raised her. So she got to live in Kansas for her childhood, just like her mama. And she looks so much like her mom. And you can just tell like she has the same ornery spirit, and she has, cool, like this cool haircut, like the shaved underneath and stuff. And I'm like, oh, you're just like your mom. You're just like your mom. You're just brave and you do what you want to do. And I love it. So with that, I really don't have much else. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer. Um, Karen, her family, her dad and her stepmom, uh, with her mother also, raised her daughter. She's an adult now, but barely an adult. So thank you, everybody who is here tonight. It just really, I mean, I think there's like 66 people here, and bigger than my high school class that I got to share Kelly with tonight. And thank you. Just thanks. JBO Nation is the best. Tonight, I believe, I don't know if you set the portal up or not, honey. Okay, the portal is set up. So you're going to go from this. It may be a jarring ride, because then you're going to because then you are going to go to Steve's stream, which looks crazy tonight. It looks so fun. It will be Bob Mata and Chris Duet. And the topic is going to be, as Bob calls him, the creep. It will be about John Wayne Gacy. So, Bob is quite the expert on that. And it will be interesting too, because Chris Duet's done so much research and has talked to so many different people who have committed murder. So it will be a very interesting stream, to be sure. So hold on to your butts, because you're about to go in the portal over to Publicly Buzzed. Thank you again so very much for being here tonight.